Welcome back to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks, a bold blend of coffee and movie review podcasting. My name is Nick Delaney, and I'm your show host, coffee and movie reviewer, and the guy who just wants to see you turn into a giant woman. In this episode, I'm joined by special guest and host of the Halfling Cinephile podcast, Amaya Rose, as we discuss Steven Universe the movie, directed by Rebecca Sugar. I'll be pairing this film with a discussion on the Smooth 7 from 7 Brew Coffee, and Amaya is bringing us a review of the Strawberry Meadows green tea from the Spice and Tea Exchange. Everyone, please take a seat, stay a while, and let's talk Patti LuPone as Yellow Diamond over some coffee. Today's guest is the host of the Halfling Cinephile podcast, where she is known for her fun movie facts, film analysis skills, articulate opinions, and well-researched discussions. Everyone, please welcome Amaya Rose to the show. Hi, Amaya.
What's popping, good people?
How are you doing?
There is a lot on Amaya's plate at this time, but she's still here.
You got this. You got this. What do you have coming up for the pod? What's going on?
Well, right now, as you may know, I have one episode coming out, probably this month, where you and I, Nick Delaney, and I, Amaya Rose, will be talking about autotune and movie musicals, which is a very fun discussion, and I am very excited for the folks to gravitate and listen to all that we have to say about Patti LuPone and Jeff Goldblum and more.
And of course, some Ryan Reynolds, Will Ferrell action.
Of course.
Which I don't want to think about those two right now. But Patti LuPone, Jeff Goldblum, they're welcome in my mind, rent-free anytime. All right, well, I am so excited to have you on the show. I love your podcast. I love the way you talk about movies. So, and this whole production, us meeting, us collaborating, this has been a work in progress. So I'm so excited to finally have it happening. It's so fun.
Absolutely. This has been it's been kind of one of those things where I'm like, if we never get to this, am I going to be like fine with that? But like every time we like get together, I'm like, why would you not want to do this? This has been a very momentous kind of collaboration that we've had. I have not been on anyone's show before. I've not been on anyone's like collaborative sort of let's just talk about movies sort of situation before, and it was lovely to have you accept my humble request to work together, and it's been fun. It's been great.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? It was such an honor. This has been a blast, and I had such a good time talking about musicals on your show, and we're going to talk about another musical on this one. And this is also the first time that I've ever been on another podcast that's not my own, or collaborated with another podcast. So this is a first for me, and I'm very excited about it. And I don't know, it's really fun to be on like the other side, like being interviewed on a podcast. So I'm very excited for our episode on the Halfling Cinephile podcast to come out, and I'm very excited for everyone to hear this one as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, getting right into things, Amaya. Also, stream the Halfling Cinephile on Spotify, if you're listening to this. But getting right into things, this first segment is a segment that I do with guests when I have a guest on the show. It is called The Coffee Table. And this is a segment reserved for the show's special guests to talk about the media that they are currently caught up in. So, Amaya, what have you been watching, reading, playing recently?
Watching, reading, playing.
Or listening to.
Sure. Okay, listening to. I have been listening to a couple of podcasts. I took a break from podcasts a while ago, but only like maybe this month, the last month, I started getting back into podcasts. And I recently have been listening to the Josh Johnson show. Josh Johnson's a comedian. I would say up and coming, but I think he's been around for maybe at least a year or two. He kind of is a student of Trevor Noah, fantastic comedian. But
Nice.
I'm used to watching his specials on YouTube. He's a saint for it, but he releases his full comedy specials on YouTube. Just you can have them for free. You can be a member if you want to. Um, but he will mention he has a show where he just tells stories, and I love just hearing like crazy stories. Like what's the craziest thing you've ever heard? And that's just kind of all of his podcasts. So I've been listening to that. It's him and Logan Nielsen, who was his stand up buddy. They're both comics, and they kind of tour together, and they come together. I think I don't know if it's every week or every other week, but they come together and they tell each other just crazy stories. Yeah.
Nice. That's really cool. I need to get into some more like comedy podcasts. I feel like comedy is sort of just like a supplement to a lot of the podcasts I listen to, but it's really cool to have one where it's the focus. What else? What else is on your coffee table right now?
What else is on my coffee table? I know I've just. Oh, well, I currently write for an entertainment website,
Oh,
and
nice.
I have been following the Severance train. Severance is
Mm,
a series on Apple TV Plus. It came out, I believe, 2021. Ooh, nope, 2022. And it was one season, and then it ended on like one of the craziest cliffhangers you've ever seen in your life.
yep.
And then it took a massive hiatus. So now that it's back, I'm kind of responsible for like keeping up and watching and keeping up with fan theories. Oh my gosh, I never used to get into fan theories. I never used to like even consider like, ooh, what if they're doing like this? And that's not really my area of expertise. But now that I'm writing for film and TV, I do have to kind of pay attention, and those are pretty exciting. It is pretty exciting to see like people are what people are like reading into and stuff. That's fun. So I've been working on Severance. I've been keeping up with Severance, and it is very I would say so far it's been rewarding. I honestly it's very Ben Stiller is the best way I can describe it. um having seen most specifically having seen The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, it's a lot like that movie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen his other thing, Escape to Dannemora.
Oh, I don't know that
Dannemora.
one.
It's something. It's on Netflix, I think, right now. But Severance is very, very, very familiar to Secret Life of Walter Mitty. It just his style is very quiet, and it's like supposed to be creepy, and it's supposed to be eerie, and it's supposed to be mundane, but you can tell he's trying to do like this crazy, like this is the opposite of mundane thing. And
Yeah.
it's just that I can see the style. I can see what he's trying to do. So that kind of sometimes will put me off from like actually enjoying the thing. But with Severance, there's enough detail. There's enough story to be followed that I can just ignore it. But there are times when certain actors and when certain scenes happen, I'm like, I'll be like, I'll kind of stop taking it seriously. But no, but yeah, it's a good series. And there's a
Yes.
third one. There's a third season slated to come out, I believe. So I've been doing Severance.
Nice. I love Severance so much. I was watching
Mm,
it like when it first came out on Apple TV Plus, and I was telling all my friends about it, like basically shaking everyone down at CNU and being like, "You have to watch this." And I got Reese, who is a mutual friend and a friend
of
of the
course.
podcast. I got Reese really into it, and we've been talking about it ever since it came out, the first season. I have not watched any of the second season yet because I'm so like I waited this long, so I'm like, why not wait a little longer for myself? But it's really cool to have like another TV show where there's so much like cultural discussion about it, like a lot of water cooler talk, because we've kind of like missed that with a lot of streaming services. You know, they just kind of rapidly release things and, you know, TV shows and moments happen so quickly. And also, when you binge watch things, it doesn't leave any room for like discussion in between the episodes with others. And I think that robs TV shows and movies of what is so special about it, and that is connection and talking about things. That's why that's like a central theme of this podcast is connecting over movies and coffee, of course. So it's really cool that Severance is like providing one of those big like TV moments, very reminiscent of like Lost or Twin Peaks or something like that. And like you said, I think Ben Stiller is like such a visionary, and he has such a unique tone and atmosphere to this project specifically, where it's very minimalist. It's very like, what's that word? Kind of like the back rooms, liminal space.
Yeah.
It's very like liminal spaces. It's very strange and odd, but there's also kind of like a very present comedy happening like on the surface. And but when you dig deeper, there's like something very, very dark happening as well.
Yeah.
So I have to bring David Lynch into every discussion. It is Lynchian in some ways. Rest in peace, David Lynch. But yeah, I love Severance, so I'm so glad you brought that up. Anything else you'd like to add to the coffee table?
Well, again, because of our episode, I've been just plowing through my musicals.
Oh, yeah.
And thinking about all the ones that I forgot to bring up. I forgot to bring up Matilda the musical. Because I liked it so much on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
Those kids, man. They, there's that saying that people are like, when you're working on a movie, like you never work with kids, you never work with animals. Those kids, I mean, they are stars.
Yes.
Every single one of them, the entire ensemble. That one, and I thought about Cameron Diaz because she was in, because we were talking about performers who like aren't known for singing. Cameron Diaz, they had to get someone to replace her in Shrek, so she didn't sing even the princess song in Shrek, but she sang in a remake of Annie in 2014 with Kavajane Wallace. And I used to wear that playlist out, but I recognize in the theme of autotune and stuff, most people were like, Cameron Diaz is like not built for this, but it was sort of, as we were saying, it was a much more affected and pop-ish kind of glossy,
right,
sort of
glossy
musical. So it kind of made more sense the way she sounded and the way that she was, that her voice was sort of modulated and filtered. But yeah, Cameron Diaz, like, what are you doing here? She's she's great for the part. She played Miss Hannigan. She played the part of the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Evil orphan lady.
Yeah. But she has to sing. And I'm very used to Carol Burnett's version. I grew up on that version.
Yes, same.
But, I was excited because I grew up on Annie, like I just said. So when I saw it and I was young, I was just excited to see more Annie. But now that I'm older, I recognize like, ooh, like it's just the production quality of this musical. These are some big names, I guess. Bobby Cannavale, Jamie Foxx, Rose Byrne is not the biggest name. Cameron Diaz, Kavajane Wallace. These are names. I wouldn't say household names. Maybe grocery store names.
Grocery store names. Oh my gosh. We did talk about the grocery store musical where you walk into like Wegmans or something and you hear "This Is Me" from The Greatest Showman blasting on the speakers. Yeah. But yeah. And that's something I realized and was thinking about after our discussion is musicals just basically singing, where they would just get an entirely different performer to voice over like the popular actor. But I guess we didn't talk about it because I can't even think of any instances of that on the top of my head. It's just like an interesting thing that Hollywood does sometimes. So, all right. Well, thank you for showing us your coffee table and all of the media that you are currently caught up in. I also we'll soon have Severance back out on my coffee table. I'm brushing off the dust right now, trying to remember all the plot threads and everything. But with that said, we are going to move right on into our coffee discussion. This is the Now Brewing segment, a luxury coffee discussion and review. All right. So I mentioned earlier, I got the Smooth 7 from 7 Brew Drive-Through Coffee in Albemarle, North Carolina. This is a chain, though, so you probably have a 7 Brew near you. Amaya, what did you have?
I went to Cary Street in Richmond, Virginia, where I kind of live. I live south of Richmond, but I always
Uh,
tell people I'm from Richmond. I went to Cary Town on Cary Street, and I went to the Spice and Tea Exchange. It's a very I want to say quaint, but that feels like cliche. It's a nice place. They have a bunch of, it's just wall after wall of teas, like special teas that they've curated and stuff. Different kinds of sugars. They have more than that. They have spice and tea. They have spices. They have like peppers, and they have these mixes of like salts and like wing rubs and stuff.
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I got what is called the Strawberry Meadows green tea. I almost got Strawberry Clouds white tea, but the white tea had, I think it was strawberry and vanilla and rose hips,
Hmm.
rose hips, and I decided against it just because I didn't feel like going mellow today, and vanilla usually is kind of a like a kind of glosses over the rest of tastes for me. So I went with
Hmm.
I went with this green tea, and I chose it because this one is it's a strawberry and orange peel
Oh,
green tea, and I'm usually a fan of strawberry lemonade, and so I was like, oh, I'll just give it a try because it's kind of nice today. But I got it
yes.
hot. Last time I got my tea cold, but I got it hot today. And I like it. I do like it. At first I was like, this is kind of whack. I thought maybe they didn't put enough sugar, but it was just hot. That's all that was wrong. It was just too hot for me to like taste
Yeah.
anything. But once it cooled down, um, I really do like it. It's mild, but the strawberry kind of gives it like a candiness, like a candied sort of effect, and the orange just sort of wakes me up a little bit. And the green tea, I just like green tea because it's chill. It's not like ginger or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a little pop of caffeine with green tea, which is always like a little added bonus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've talked about a tea on this show before, so this is the first. So thank you
Maya
for
does not drink
bringing.
coffee.
And that's all right. We have talked about a matcha latte before. But yeah, I'm not a tea drinker, but this is, I think, like I review coffee, but it's more like just generally coffee house drinks, which tea is of course included in that. So thank you for that review. That sounds like delicious.
It is delicious.
Nice. I love Carytown, by the way. Carytown is just like has so many cool little things. Yeah.
It does have so many cool little things. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I appreciate a trip down to Richmond whenever I can get down there. So I'll have to try that the next time I visit. So thank you for
Yeah,
sharing.
go visit Plan 9. Plan 9's the best.
Plan 9. Gotcha.
It's a record store.
Oh, okay, nice. I love a record store too. Anything that sells physical media, love. All right. And I had the Smooth 7. This is a latte drink from 7 Brew. 7 Brew is a drive through coffee joint. So, yeah, you might just like stumble across a 7 Brew here or there. I don't know where they typically have 7 Brews, but I've heard a lot about this. So I had to try it out when I saw it. But it's just a drive through place. They only sell drinks. They also have like energy drinks, but there's no food at all. And the Smooth 7 from 7 Brew is an Irish cream and white chocolate latte. I think the impression I got was that a lot of 7 Brew's coffee was like your very, very sugary type of coffee, kind of like Dunkin' Donuts vibe. And I'm not really all about that. Usually I gravitate towards like black coffee or a very strong coffee flavor. So I was a little like skeptical going into this, but I was excited to try it nonetheless. And I have to say, I loved it. I got like a large size, and their large size here was like huge. It felt very like all American, sugary drink that definitely isn't good for me, but it tasted delicious. And yes, it was very sugary, but the coffee flavor was also very strong. So I appreciated that about this drink. This is absolutely going to be a guilty pleasure coffee place. Yeah, I can't wait to go back here if I stumble across one again. I went to this place when I was out in North Carolina for a wedding, which Amaya, you were also attending. And I had a little coffee moment with Reese. So it was lovely. Definitely interesting that it's drive-through only, because usually another big factor to me about going to get coffee is the atmosphere of the coffee house. And of course, the atmosphere of this coffee house is the inside of your car. So, yeah, so very interesting, very different, but overall, I give the Smooth 7 the Nick pick. Amaya, what do you give the Strawberry Meadows green tea?
You have to remind me what the scale is.
Nick pick is good, Nick mix is kind of and then Nick nix is bad.
The Nick pick it is.
The Nick pick it is. All right, all right. Okay, and getting into our next segment, this is the Coffee Thought, which is an outlet dedicated to voice our many incoherent thoughts over a lovely cup of coffee or tea. All right, I know you have a coffee thought prepared for us today, Amaya, but first, I wanted to talk a little bit about your podcast. So, for those who are not familiar with the Halfling Cinephile, can you tell them about that?
Sure. Oh boy, what an interesting. My podcast, the Halfling Cinephile. I started in 2021 because I was rooming with a fantastic roommate. Her name is Julani,
Mm-hmm.
and she noticed that I would like kind of force people, be like, you're gonna watch this movie with me. If I wasn't forcing somebody to watch a movie with me, I was just already in my own world with a movie. I was watching whatever at my desk or whatever. And so she kind of picked up on, okay, you have like a lot of thoughts. You have a lot to say about these movies, like a lot more than we have to say about these movies. You should just make a podcast. And podcasts weren't at the forefront. I don't think I'd really listened to a podcast before, honestly. And I had just gotten Spotify. So I wasn't used to like a service where I could go and like listen to like people just talking. But I was like, sure. I mean, I'm not doing anything else. I'm just in college. So when was it? I want to say it was in like the fall. And my first episode I did was Ratatouille.
Perfect.
Because I knew that was a comfort movie and I knew I had a lot to say about it.
Yes.
And so when I started doing my podcast, I had somewhere to go. I had an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I had somewhere to go to put all of my thoughts where I wouldn't have to like wait for a person to listen to me. I wouldn't have to like stop somebody and like make sure that they were paying attention to what I was saying about it and like make sure I wasn't having to force relation out of a person. I could just talk, and
Yeah.
anyone who wanted to listen to it would listen to it. I did that for a year. My production was not regular, so I would post one episode and be like, all right, I did an episode, cool, and just keep doing whatever I was doing for like months. And then I'd be like, you know what, I've seen this movie and I've thought a lot about it. I should put this on the podcast. And people would do that a lot. People would say to me like, you should put that on your podcast. You should do this movie on your podcast. And I was like, guys, I only have one episode. Like, I only have one episode and I've only done it on a movie I've watched like 1 billion times. I'm not going to this isn't a regular thing. But I did that for a year. I did very sparse episodes for a year. And then I kind of stopped because, well, I think I stopped in December. The last one I did before my hiatus, I did on Knives Out because, I mean,
that's a good movie.
You're gonna have to listen to it.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so I stopped there and it was December and I was like, you guys, it's been a year. I can't wait to see where we are like in another year. And then I just did not keep going. So um I I think last year, 2024, right? We're in 2025.
Oh,
That's totally where we are. It's
yeah.
February. Um in 2024, um things started getting sticky for Amaya.
Mm.
But I was trying to find something that I could do to give myself some motivation. So I thought I had some scripts that I had written for more episodes that I just never got around to because I started working and I just had other responsibilities. And I also just didn't feel like it because I didn't have enough that I felt like I felt like I didn't have enough to just keep producing. I wanted I thought if I was going to come back, I wanted it to be more regular, for it to be more scheduled. And I tried to find something that would give me like a sense of like, all right, you have this to do. You can do this today. So I had a couple of scripts, like I said. And so I was like, well, I'll just record these. And that way I'll at least have some episodes to release whenever I am ready to like re-release this podcast. Oh, I did the episodes. And then I was like, all right, if we're going to do this podcast, if we're going to come back to this podcast, we have to like revamp stuff. So I had to change a couple of things around. And I took down my first batch of episodes and I put them on my Patreon. You can find it at patreon.com.
Yes. Check out the Patreon.
You can find
yes.
it. Yeah, patreon.com/Halfling Cinephile. It's free. Feel free to donate and support the podcast. But until next time, I'm Amaya Rose, your Halfling Cinephile. Thanks for listening, guys. But no, I put all of those episodes on my Patreon so that, because I was sort of like, I'm probably going to have a different style by now. So I took them down to kind of restart for real. Mm-hmm. I didn't start a new podcast. I just restarted the one I had. So I made myself some new cover art. And I stopped putting music in it. Spotify used to let you put music in it. And that was like probably my favorite aspect. I could put in like the song that I was talking about or like the piece of the score that I was talking about, but they took that feature away. Spotify for creators is now what it's called.
Yes.
And it's gone through like a billion iterations. And so they've taken out a lot of tools, but I restarted my stuff. This is a very long-winded answer, but I restarted my stuff. Okay. And so I'm trying. Content creation is not for everyone. And I don't think it's even for me, honestly, but I'm trying. So I'm trying to do every other Thursday, release something on my podcast. But it is difficult. Garnering an audience, especially if you are a person like me, who is not a fan of the machine that is social media, that is content creation. Again, I know it's really difficult to, you just have to have something interesting. And for me right now, it's just difficult to find where my podcast feels interesting to me. I do it because I have thoughts and I want to put them somewhere. Right. That's the basis of my podcast, but I don't have the greatest audience, so I don't have so much that makes me feel like you have to like put this out. You have to get people to notice your podcast. So I don't really entertain social media and I don't really put myself out there much because I tried and it kind of got me nowhere. So I was like, if I can just focus it to just Patreon, which is what I do now. I just send people straight to Patreon if they want to talk to me, if they want to leave me some kind of notes or whatever. Or they just, text me because they know me. But yeah, it's pretty difficult, but I am trying to keep with it because I feel like there's something important about it. If I came back to it and if I'm still doing it, there's got to be something that matters to it. So I try.
Yeah. And it's an outlet. So, I think I talked about this a little when I was on your show, but this podcast very much started for me as an outlet as well. And as you continue the podcast and everything and expand it, it's easy to forget why you started it. And you're just like, oh, well, how do I get the biggest following and everything? And you have to like keep reminding yourself, oh, it never was about that for me. It was about just having an outlet. And when you say like, what makes my show special, what will get people listening? I think just the fact that these are our opinions. And I think, at least for me, I need to like value my own opinion more because that's like what the show is built around. It's hard to like remember like, your mindset and your viewpoint is what's important to the show. So I definitely get it. I feel like I wouldn't really be doing social media either for this show if it weren't for just the fact that I enjoy graphic design and like sharing that with people. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I just like making little designs to put on Instagram or whatever. But yeah, it's really hard to break through, especially I know both of us are anti short form video content. And that's kind of like, it feels like the only way to break through these days. And it's so frustrating because it's like, what happened to just kind of organic discovery of like different art forms and everything? I feel like the only way to discover art right now is to find it in your For You page, And that's not how it always was. And we need to go back to other methods of discovering, different artists. So, but thank you for sharing all of that. I love your podcast. I think that you have great analysis skills of these movies, and you're very, um, I don't know if succinct is the right word, but you're very to the point with your reviews. And that's like my podcast is the opposite because we talk about like weird stuff that has nothing to do with movies sometimes. But you're very to the point about the movies, and you're very informative about just like interesting facts about the movie and just informative about your opinions. And you're very kind of, I don't know what the word is. You're very like, you do a really good job defending your viewpoint and also explaining it. Like whenever you explain, I listened to the Puss in Boots one particularly, and that one I was like, wow, like this is great. It's you just do such a good job of like explaining the ins and out of the movie and the context surrounding it. So your podcast is great. And thank you for sharing your story with it.
I appreciate your kind words, kind
Oh, of
sir.
course.
Thank you.
Moving on to the main event of the episode, Amaya. This is the Now Showing, our feature ideological analysis and critical film review segment by yours truly and guest. I usually do a little summary, and just to warn everyone, this is a long summary because I feel like there's a lot to explain about this movie. So strap in. Here we go. Steven Universe the movie is the musical follow-up to Rebecca Sugar's hit Cartoon Network television series following the half-human, half-alien Steven in the aftermath of restoring peace to the millennia-long conflict among the alien species known as the Gems. That was one sentence. I have had a lot of coffee today, and I wrote this like last minute, so sorry everyone. I'm not done yet. While Steven and his family of gems are enjoying their happily ever after on Earth, they are visited by the mysterious gem Spinel, who has an evil vendetta against Steven, his deceased mother, and Earth as a whole. When Spinel resets the gems to their factory settings and wipes away Steven's hard-earned powers, he must uncover his late mother's dark past with Spinel himself and save the Earth from destruction once again. Wow, okay. That was a hearty summary, but there are like a lot of moving pieces in this movie because there is so much lore and just weird concepts going on. Amaya, what is your relationship with this movie and what do you think about it overall?
Steven Universe. The
Steven
movie.
Universe.
I keep dating myself. Well, not dating myself, but I keep like giving away like how old I might be. This movie came out when I was in my freshman year of college.
Yes.
And I had been following the series since it started, really.
Mm-hmm.
And when it started, things like The Amazing World of Gumball and Adventure Time definitely Stuff like that was out, and I just when it showed up, I was like, oh, that's cute. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, look at this little guy just bouncing around with his cookie cats. Um, but I legitimately followed it. I think it must have been one of the first series that I actually followed from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And so when this movie came out, I was just excited that I was caught up with everything, that
Yeah.
I could like actually like know what was going on in this movie. Um, I don't know if I cried when I first saw it, but I can tell you every time since I remember being like, I'm not gonna do it. You're not gonna make me cry. Like it's very, ooh, it's so emotional.
It is.
I just, it's so impressive how far they took all of the characters. Like they could have just left it at Steven. They could have left the gems behind, but this is their story.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
all of their stories. And I love how like, well, I guess because of the animation, they get to be like these silly kind of goofy physical humor sort of characters.
Right.
So I've enjoyed how they have evolved and how they literally evolved because of the reforming
Yes,
thing.
the poofing.
Yeah, but I just appreciated that that I knew. I really appreciated that I like was caught up with everyone's story and that I could understand like the gravity of what was happening in the movie. So I've rewatched this movie, I don't know, 6-7 times
Yeah.
since it's happened. Just it's, I guess I wouldn't say it's a comfort movie, but I will pick it out when I want to like be emotional, when
Yeah.
I'm in an emotional mood, when I feel like I need to cry but I need to push. I will. I'll usually take to Steven Universe the movie. I think it's a great movie. The music. Oh my goodness, the
Oh,
music used to give me goosebumps. It may
my
still.
gosh.
It's just that I'm comfortable with it. But the music is phenomenal. Patti LuPone.
Patti LuPone, everybody. Oh my
Yeah,
God. Yeah. Yeah. This movie is one of the most enjoyable fucking things that has ever happened to me. To sort of explain, and we won't talk about the show that much. I'll just focus this discussion on the movie. But just to briefly talk about my relationship with the show, it's very similar to yours. I remember when Cartoon Network dropped the pilot for this movie, which the pilot was like a completely different animation style and everything.
absolutely different. Yeah.
And I remember when they dropped that and I watched it on YouTube or something as a, what, 12 or 13-year-old. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love it. And when they announced it would be made into a whole show, I remember watching the first episode right when it aired. And yeah, I followed the show along ever since. And I don't think like you said, I don't think I've ever followed a show along from start to end like I have with Steven Universe. You just grow up with this story. This will be a spoiler review, I'm assuming. So we're going to discuss spoilers. If you have not seen the show, uh, go watch it. But also, I will say, I think that this movie does a surprisingly excellent job of making itself accessible to people who know nothing about Steven Universe. Like the first two songs, really, the Have You Ever Heard of Steven or whatever it's called, and then the
Yeah.
Here We Are in the Future song, those are like,
Mm-hmm.
they do an excellent job of kind of explaining the whole concept, all of the character arcs, everything you need to know, but at the same time, like making it very enjoyable for people who are like longtime fans as well. And that's what I noticed when I viewed it for this recording is that, wow, like this is actually a great show for newcomers. Of course, you miss out on all like the amazing surprises that the show has in store because there's so many crazy plot twists. But, you could definitely go into this not knowing anything.
Yeah, you reminded me of that. They do all have their little verse
Yes.
when they kind of explain like, well, came from Homeworld. And now I rock with the best, with the illest of the humans. And
Yes.
yeah, that is just the whole movie, the whole theme of change is
Mm.
gorgeous. I
Yes.
adore it. I think it's so interesting. And again, I wasn't like the series when I was watching the series, I wasn't really like, well, I had to get used to these are genderless space rocks. Like people would be like talking about like when they would tell their parents about it and their parents would kind of get upset for some reason.
Yeah.
And I was like, I guess these are sort of like whatever character, like not whatever characters, but like these aren't humans. These are fictional things, and the story that they are conveying is so real. It's so important.
Right.
And so when it got to the movie and it was talking about change, I was like, like even these genderless space rocks can be human.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see that change is just what we do all the time, and just that you can infuse anything with the ever human concept of change. Is
Right.
just, I just like how they did it. They did it in a very, very, very well done, thought out, and very exciting and fun way. It's so impressive.
I think that the message of change in this film was really well done, especially because the series finale, the original series, the ending, I forget like that, what was the final episode called? It was like 45 minutes. It was something like Change Your Mind. Change Your Mind.
Thank you.
The ending for Steven's character was very much like he was himself the whole time. He just needed to be true to himself and stop trying to look for answers in others and look inward. So this one was a really good evolution of that message, because it was like, okay, look inward, but also be okay with the changes that are happening and just let it happen freely. And like, maybe it will be rocky, maybe it won't be okay, but like, that's just how life is. I really appreciated the message in this movie. And touching on the controversy of this show was highly scrutinized, very controversial, even, from an outward approach, but even within the fandom, there is so much infighting and everything. And I personally don't associate with the Steven Universe fandom that much, because growing up with it, I was like, oh, there was like some crazy moments in that fandom. But just, the whole show, all of the gems are, yes, genderless space rocks. Their bodies are like projections of light or something crazy, but they're all feminine presenting. They all use like she, her pronouns, as far as I know. And they're all lesbian presenting for the most part as well. But when it comes down to it, yeah, they're just genderless space rocks. They just present as like feminine. So to an outsider, this show can look very radical in a lot of ways. And personally, like growing up, I was told not to watch this show.
Really?
Yeah, I was, but I still did anyways. And here we are talking about it like several years later, 10 years later. This show is 10 years old, right?
Great day.
Wow. That's crazy. But yeah, this show's so controversial. Obviously, like, there are so many same-sex relationships in this show, or same-sex presenting, I guess, except if you live in Russia, where some of the gems were changed to look like men, which is crazy as
Word?
well. Yes.
What?
And just like the concepts of fusing, and fusing being relationships and everything, and how with that there were some discussions about toxic, abusive relationships.
Yes,
And
Malachite.
yes, Malachite, which that was when I was told to not watch this show, was when that was making headlines, the whole Malachite thing. But I think that this show did a really good job of depicting what abusive relationships look like to younger kids, because yeah, that's a heavy topic that they're going to be introduced to in life. So to get to the movie, now that we've explained our relationship with this.
I know you said we were going to do the movie.
No.
I just keep bringing it back.
No worries, because I could talk about this show forever, and we'll also talk about Steven Universe future for a little bit at the end. To get to the movie, I want to start by talking about one of the fusions we see, which is Steven and his father, Greg, fusing. Yes. What are your thoughts about that?
It could not be a more perfect fusion. Like, okay, like the one thing I do like about the movie and Steven Universe future is that we do not see all of the possible fusions because we'd be here forever if that
Yes.
was the goal.
Yeah.
But if I'm, I mean, they really did save that for. They saved the best for that movie. I don't think. Well, I personally had never considered Steven fusing with his father, but
Yeah, me neither.
they had one part. I think there was an episode where they tried to get Greg to fuse with Pearl. I know he tried to fuse with Rose, like when they were like dating.
Yeah.
And he just kind of didn't get it. But there was one part where it got very close to Greg fusing with Pearl, but it didn't happen, and that was okay because that's just not. It's not always going to happen. These things are always going to happen. So when Greg and Steven fused, one, the physical element is just spot on. I mean, like, for their personalities, the physical embodiment of the both of them coming together, they both, because they're so kindred. They
Yes.
are really, their relationship is tight. Greg loves his son, and that's why they fuse. Obviously, he loves his son. They are just family. But I know when I looked at it and his voice.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, you can't get any you can't get any more perfect than this guy. This dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's high camp. It was just ridiculous in the best ways. And like you said, we could have, I think early on in the days of Steven Universe, it was like, oh, well, I remember when Peridot was introduced, I was like, oh, another gem? It's, but then we got to the point where it's like, oh yeah, there's a whole world of gems. And you're just seeing like all these different gems in the background and we'll never even know who that gem is.
Yeah.
And there's a point where it's like, oh, who could fuse with who and who could do what? So there was like a million different fusions we could have seen. This was the least expected fusion ever.
For some reason.
Yeah, and it was so shocking. So I just wanted to bring that up because it was such a weird, ridiculous in the best way moment of this movie. And I think a lot of newcomers or people who don't know a lot about Steven Universe, and I think this is where a lot of the controversy of the show originates. I think a lot of newcomers confuse fusion, meaning it's like a sexual relationship,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and it can be romantic. Look at Garnet and look at other fusions we see.
Yeah.
But I think fusion just represents love in a certain way,
yeah.
whether it's like familial, like Greg and Steven, or whether it's romantic,
Yeah.
like Steven and Connie or Ruby and Sapphire, or it's abusive, like Jasper and Lapis.
Yes,
there's
listeners,
all sorts.
please get this through your heads. There are different kinds of love. It is not just sex.
Yes, yes, exactly. And yeah, even like Steven fusing with Pearl, or all the different gems. It's different types of love and different types of like being in sync and everything. And Lapis, she wouldn't have fused with Jasper if she didn't like have a plan in place. Like the fusion wouldn't have worked if Lapis, didn't want to. Not want to, but she formed with Jasper to trap themselves and everything. We're getting into the show, but yeah, it was such and I love the different fusions of this show. We got to see Opal, which my favorite fusion,
Yes.
Alexandrite, and of course, I don't know, did we see Stevani? I guess not, but that was great. You would think we saw Stevani in this, right?
Right, yeah.
I guess it was more about Steven.
Connie was going to space
camp.
stuff.
Yeah.
And she would show up on Lion with her sword and be like, I'm here for the fight. But I don't think they fused.
It was just there, I guess, to make the Greg and Steven fusion into a larger discussion about the film. There were just so many moments in this movie that as a fan were so cool to see and so unexpected too. And I think the unexpected part makes this movie not just be fan service, because it really gave us like really cool original creative concepts instead of just like, oh, well, the people want to see this fusion or that fusion, throw them in. It like actually had a purpose behind everything it was doing. And it made that purpose into just really cool concepts and everything. And I guess that brings me to the discussion of all of the different gems and their storylines in this movie. Just seeing like the main gems, so garnet, amethyst, and pearl, seeing them like reset to their factory settings and having them like relive sort of their character arcs could feel very repetitive, but this movie made it feel creative and fresh. So Amaya, what did you think about like that aspect of this movie and that plot line?
I absolutely agree. It could have been redundant. It could have just been like,
Yeah,
well, we've seen this. That's what the whole show was about. But I think, we've never seen them at factory like settings
we
before.
haven't,
We've seen them.
except garnet maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but we'd never seen them actually like not know each other.
Right.
We've we've never had to pull them out of them before like this.
Yeah.
I think with Amethyst, especially when she had that moment, she in the series, she had like a period where she was just kind of trying to find like the gem that she was. Like she was trying to be like all big and tough, and she was trying to fit whatever mold that people would
Hmm.
tell her she was supposed to be, because she was going through like Jasper kind of being like, you're weak and whatever.
Yes.
But with this, it was everyone had to, it was they have been reset. You can't get back until you feed back into them your love for them, your experience with them. So I thought, again, it wasn't redundant. I get that it, yeah, we've seen this concept before, but just that it was funneled into the way that it was written.
Yeah.
It was pretty smart.
And it made creative choices too. For example, when we kind of see Garnet forming for the first time, when we see that in the show, we see Ruby saves Sapphire, and that's when they fuse. But in the movie, Sapphire saves Ruby,
Yeah.
and it's reversed a little bit. So it just kind of shows you like it's almost like a multiverse moment where it shows you like this alternate
Yeah.
version. And of course, it lends this whole concept in the movie lends itself to really comedic moments as well, especially with Pearl and like how she's obsessed with Greg. And I also love the parallel because Pearl resents Greg usually because he stole Rose away from her, who Pearl was originally obsessed with. But now Pearl's obsessed with Greg. And there's the moment where she like blows that little horn when the van pulls up and like makes the red carpet for Greg and
The red
everything.
carpet, yeah.
Yeah, I think that this concept, it could have been so redundant, and it could have been like, as a fan, it could have been like, okay, well, like we've seen this before, but they made it so fresh. And I'm really glad that they made this choice. Another thing that this film did really well, I think, as a TV film, I feel like a lot of TV spin-off movies, especially straight to TV ones, they kind of are just irrelevant to the larger story. And it's almost like you're watching an isolated story happen within itself. And you could just like go back to the show and it's like the movie never even happened. But I think that this movie felt so relevant and impactful to the larger story, which is ironic because you're basically just seeing like the gems go to their factory settings and learn everything they forgot. But like it makes itself very impactful and it lends itself to the larger story very well. So what did you think about this in the larger context of Steven Universe?
Yeah, well, I mean, jumping ahead, Steven Universe Future, I think just, it's kind of just an annex sort of season.
Yeah.
Is it considered a different series, Steven Universe Future?
Yeah, I think it is. It's
I
like a
think it
limited
is.
series. Yeah.
Yeah. But, that would not have existed if not for the movie. The movie
Right.
had to be there if that was going to continue. But yeah, I would agree. Like, okay, going back to SpongeBob then. The That's one of my favorite movies ever, the SpongeBob movie. But SpongeBob is sort of sitcom-y, formulaic-ish.
Uh-huh.
So without that movie, SpongeBob just keeps going, and it,
Yeah, the movie
has
never
kept going.
happened. Yeah.
Yeah, but with Steven Universe, they it's just one fat episode. Like
Yeah, it
it's really
is.
more of just a
Yeah.
very very in depth episode. Um, so I think it was like it was really necessary if they were going to keep going with Steven Universe future. Yeah,
Yeah, if we saw Future right after the original events of the show, it wouldn't really make sense, especially because like you see the diamonds kind of like with a whole different mindset. You see Spinell with the diamonds. And of course, Steven, he's kind of following up on this whole message where he's like learning about change and accepting change within himself. It's like a follow up to that. It's almost like Steven Universe Future is just a spin off of the movie. So,
exactly.
yeah. Uh, Talking about Spinell, what do you think of Spinell as a villain?
She, I think I don't know if there was a point in time where I started recognizing that people were like looking for this sort of the whole villain origin story like meme. It was like a meme at one
Uh
point where
huh.
people would just be like, "This is my villain origin story," and it would just be people like I don't know, tweeting or like posting things that like might like mildly bothered them. They'd be like, "This is my villain origin story."
Yeah, yeah.
If in that regard, Spinell's villain origin story is wild, especially
Yes.
the path that we took to knowing who Pink Diamond is, especially with that in mind. Spinell's villain origin story is just tragic. It's so sad. Like, I feel, you feel for her, like, once that reveal happens, because we are doing spoilers, right? Because that's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah, we're doing spoilers.
Um,
Yep.
when it finally drops that Pink just deserted her. I mean, what is the
Yeah.
human equivalent to that? Like, what is the human equivalent to leaving a friend by herself
Yeah.
on a planet? It's just never to come back
There's no
ever.
human
And you're
equivalent.
still
Yeah.
right, right,
It's only
right.
something
Which
like,
is why,
yeah.
yeah, which is why it was so crazy because we can't even. I mean, we can't fathom because we came up with it, but it's. I mean, how often do you hear of something like that happening? You just a being left another one who really adored this person. She really adored Pink
Yeah.
Diamond, but it was just the relationship became one-sided. And it was, again, with Steven Universe. Steven Universe is the relationship show. So that
Yeah.
they just kept going with Spinell's relationship with Pink Diamond and coming back and being like, you, Pink, deserted me. I hate you. And you're like this little dude now. I'm gonna kill you. Like
Kill you and kill
it
everyone
was
on this
just
planet. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so I think that what they did with Spinell was very, very impressive. She's a rightfully annoying and persistently positive when she was reset. Sort
Yes.
of character is just this goofball who's just like, can you just for like 2 seconds just like take something serious? But so that you can see why she might have been left. Not that you can say that you would have left her also, but so
Yeah.
that you can relate to what Pink might have been going through. Because she also had her own priorities. She wanted this planet, so she left and was like, I'm not taking you with me. So Spinell's story just, it is a tragic one, but an
Yes.
understandable one.
And of course, all of the songs with Spinell in them are incredible. Sarah Stiles, I believe, is the voice actress for Spinell and critically acclaimed, actually, when this movie came out. I believe she did a fantastic job. But this Spinell is just, they had a very hard task of following up the Diamonds as villains. And I think they did the perfect job with Spinell because just the contrast between, you see Spinell originally as a villain, but then we see her in her original factory setting when she gets zapped or whatever, and rejuvenated is the word. And
Right, right.
she's like this overwhelmingly positive gem. So you're like, oh my God, you're like, what happened to her? What could be so bad? And then when you see it, it is maybe the one of the darkest things in this whole show. And it is so powerful and interesting, and it just like perfectly ties into this larger story really well. And yeah, Steven, the whole show is kind of cleaning up the mess his mother left behind, unknowingly cleaning up her mess. And like even now, he's still discovering like messes she made that he doesn't even know about. It's really well done. And one detail I noticed in watching the movie this time was we see, so the gems, when they die, I guess, they poof and they have to reform and they take on a new form, and they usually have a new appearance after that, whether it be like a new hairstyle or outfit or anything. So Spinel was in her original form, and we never saw her get poofed. But then when we're introduced to her as a villain, she has an entirely different outfit, which means in between her finding out that Pink Diamond was never coming back and her invading Earth, she was poofed somewhere along the line. And the only answer I could come up with to why she was poofed is that she basically died out of grief and out of sadness, out of extreme sadness. What do you think about that?
I have never heard such a theory. This, you're making perfect sense. I guess this is that something, again, I don't theorize ever. So like for you to just rip that out of, did it take you a long time to come up with that, or were
I've
you
seen
just
this
like, oh,
movie
she
like
definitely.
I've seen this movie like 5 different times, I think, and this was the first time since maybe 2020 that I watched it. And I picked up on it this time. I was like, huh, she had an outfit change when, and the beginning of the movie, we see the broadcast that triggered Spinel to invade Earth. I was like, so in between that broadcast and her invading Earth, which was like a few hours, honestly, I assume in between those two
Right, because
things.
she got up and like ran and was like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She poofed somewhere in between there. So I was like, what could have happened to her?
Oh my goodness. The idea that she poofed out of grief is my favorite thing that you have said so
Yeah.
far. Um oh man, I've been getting into um I've been getting into grief a lot. Not um how can I talk about this without being personal? I've been consuming a lot of grief media, I guess you could say, like
Mhm.
shows about people losing someone, people grieving, uh, people going through relationship struggles and like heartbreak and stuff that causes a grief that doesn't even mean the death of a person.
Yeah.
Um, so for you to suggest that she died out of grief is that means so much more to me
Mhm.
that she, well, I mean, we don't know what happened, but considering that is true, that would that would make me feel so much more for her, because I now get grief, and I get how woeful it makes a person. So I wonder if she, if it was a self-poofing, or if she
Yeah.
just became so sad that her gem couldn't take it, which would be insane because they're
Yeah.
gems. She's not even human.
Right.
That's remarkable.
Yeah. That's interesting. And I imagine like Pearl went through something similar when she lost Rose originally. So it's just interesting, I think, like just uh, how Rebecca Sugar was like, how can I make Pink Diamond to be the most vile, vicious, evil person ever? So yeah, I think that she wrote this new character into the show so seamlessly that I almost hate to imagine this show without Spinell, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, I guess we would be very remiss if we did not talk about the music, because this is a musical after all. What are your thoughts as a professional musician yourself? What are your thoughts
Oh
here?
please. Oh my gosh. You want me to go into like the mixing process? And they really should have just tuned this up just a bit more. It would have been perfect if they had just cut this part out.
Uh-huh.
No. Yeah, no, it's great. Like you said, Spinell has this sort of jukebox, electric jukebox sort of thing
Yeah.
going on. Is it electric jazz?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was, I think, pretty hip by then. This sort of like revamping, I don't know, steampunk sort of music. I'm pulling stuff out of the air just to try to describe the sound, but yeah, it was appropriate for her at that time. I think if it came out now, I'd be like sounds dumb. Get a life. I don't know, but yeah, no, I thought Spinell's music was very particular to her. I always, every time Pearl's song when she gets reset, every time that shows up, I do get chills because it's like she doesn't know anything.
Right. Yeah.
Again, Steg, that whole thing, I think Independent Together is something that really does resonate with me because in terms of relationships, I really value my independence.
Yes.
But I had, I'm like, I had a relationship. I didn't have a relationship, but I was pursuing a relationship. And I was just kind of like, yeah, like, is that possible? Can you be like independent and just keep going in tandem, like I don't know, parallel lines or something? And so that well, not posthumously, it's not dead, but like years after I'd seen it,
retrospectively,
the song kind of the song kind of just meant a lot more to me. So I think that's just fantastic. That's so amazing when a piece of art when like music, when a movie just hits like so differently later, and it takes just time to happen. That is so fascinating. But Independent Together definitely resonates with me. Now, what are the other ones? Come on, Come Live With Us in the Palace.
Oh my gosh.
That was new for the Diamonds because the Diamonds, like you said, they had been painted as the bad guys, the ones to fear, even though we started meeting them and we started getting to know them, because Blue was just this sad, is she Irish?
She's Irish,
she's just this sad girl who's just grieving her friend. What are they, sisters or something? They're not sisters. They're just the Diamonds grieving Pink Diamond.
Yeah.
And so that was a different thing, wasn't it? What's the use of feeling blue? Is that right?
Yeah, that's the only time we heard
the
Diamond. Yes, that's from the series, but that's the only time we ever heard any of the Diamonds sing was Yellow and Blue's duet, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, so apart from like those moments, the Diamonds were to be revered, and they continued to be this sort of like a godlike character in this series. So when the movie showed up, I did like that they had been transformed into this new kind of, oh, Stephen, we love you and stuff. That was interesting to me, but I think for some reason I prefer viewing the Diamonds as sort of like a godlike sort of character, just because it was so much cooler. Because like now that they are on Team Steven, it's like, all right, what else is there to? And by that point, it was like I was just like, there's no more series to do. You can stop now.
Yeah.
But I think it's still cute. I still think the song is cute, and the vocals are talking about professionalism or whatever.
Phenomenal.
The vocals are yes,
and of course Patti LuPone. One of my favorite parts about this show is Patti LuPone playing Yellow Diamond. But yeah, the Diamonds were such a welcome inclusion into this movie, and I love the content we got with them. I love their song, and I love that they do the intro when there's like the storybook kind of like Disney.
Stephen.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that the movie's kind of presented like a classic Disney movie almost.
Cinderella or something, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's almost like an inversion of like a classic Disney movie, where it's like there is no happily ever after, and there's always, Stephen puts it, there's always work to do, which
I'll
I
always
thought
have my
was,
work to do.
it was a little cliche, but it fit in well. But the diamonds I thought were just spectacular in this movie, and I love that they fit really well into Steven's character arc, because Steven before was sort of like always looking for that motherly love. And now the diamonds are there and they are like willing to shower him with all this motherly love. And he's like, actually, I don't want that. Like, I'm going to do
Yeah.
my own thing. So I really love that the movie opens with that, because you're seeing Steven at the height of his character. And it's in the end, he remembers like, oh yeah, I had to change for all these things to happen. Like I had to stop searching for motherly love or XYZ. So I thought that the diamonds were a really good inclusion into this story, especially for Spinell's character, where I don't know, Spinell ended up with the diamond. It was just very beautiful. And yeah, I loved hearing them sing. Talking about the music, Chance the Rapper was included on this soundtrack. He like
What?
he worked on this music. He was like,
No, this is familiar now. Never
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Yes.
And of course, Estelle was a big part of the soundtrack and everything, as with all the performers, which Estelle is so cool. But this
Mm-hmm.
was just, I love this soundtrack. I love that there are like, you're the music person, so there's probably a name for this, but like the musical callbacks, where each character kind of has like their own tune. For example, when Garnet has her verse in Here We Are in the Future, where she's like, suddenly they were fusing, and it's like dun
Yeah,
dun
yeah.
dun dun dun.
Stronger than you, yeah.
Yeah, I love that it calls back and references other songs,
Callbacks, motif, same, yeah.
motifs. Yeah, and each character has like their own instrument that's associated with them. Bismuth kind of has like that.
Bismuth!
Yes, love Bismuth. Bismuth has like that kind of like sound where it's almost like a hammer striking an iron. Obviously, Amethyst has like a lot of percussion in her songs and everything. Just really cool music stuff that I don't know the words for, but
You
music
have been
theory.
actively listening.
I didn't study music. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I learned how to play when I was in college. I learned how to play "Here Comes a Thought." That's not in the movie, but I learned how to.
Yeah.
That's like the one Steven Universe song I can play. Or no, I think I also probably learned how to play "Peace and Love" and "On
Oh,
the Planet Earth."
peace and love.
Peridot's little song with
Yeah.
the campfire. I learned how to play those things on the ukulele, and I was like, I guess I'm officially like, you know, officially some sort of Steven Universe head or something.
The
But
ukulele.
yeah, that's probably my claim to fame on the ukulele. I'm not like, that is not my profession, ladies and gentlemen. No, the music is great. I love the music. The music of Steven
Yeah.
Universe is great, and it sounds awesome.
Yeah, and they use like the reprise really well, where at the end it's like here we are in the future reprise, where Steven says,
I
I'll
love that
be,
one. I love that
yeah,
one.
it's so like, I think I did cry when I heard that the first time, but Steven says, I'll be ready every day for as long as I can say I can make a change. It's just like a really cool way to expand on like the previous song in the musical. Uh, it's just a great musical, like altogether. Like, ugh,
I just think it's precious. It's a very emotional story. It's a like you said, it's a
yeah,
great musical period. The songs are very very well written for the characters that have them.
yeah.
And like you said, I haven't, like I was saying, you've been actively listening to this music in terms of like, did you like do your own like research like just for this, or like
I'm just a
have you
fan.
actually thought like, wow.
I'm just a fan, and like I even like in the, I guess, 5 year gap between like when this movie first came out and watching it yesterday, I sometimes would pull up the soundtrack and just listen, because I really do enjoy this music. It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what the other ones were at toward the end. Oh, Garnet's the truth. It's the truth. The truth.
Oh, the true kind of love.
That
Yeah.
thing is probably my favorite in the movie because of what's happening. It's the apocalypse, but we're just getting this like, it's not lo-fi. It's like jazz. It's just this mellow sort of like, yeah, we're bopping sort
this
of
like
thing.
electronic
and
jazz.
Everyone's dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like several minutes where it's just like electronic jazz playing and you're just watching like Beach City get demolished.
Demolished.
It's funny, but also like it's just Steven Universe. Like that's what I love about the show, where just the priority it places on music is great.
Yeah.
I guess my only other thing I want to mention is just like the animation and how good the animation was, I thought.
The dropping Steven finger by finger is probably the most vivid thing that I remember about that movie.
Oh yeah.
The flip-flop, the tears falling to the ground. It was just very different from the series.
Yeah.
The series, I wouldn't say the series was all the same, but it definitely was a little bit more flat. So in this movie, it was, with it being such a climactic moment, that kind of perspective shift and that sort of change definitely made a difference.
Yeah. And I think it's I know like Adventure Time did this sometimes, and they did it in Change Your Mind, where I think the frame rate actually goes up, so they animate like more during scenes like that. And I got that I don't know if they did that throughout this whole movie, but it was especially in the moment you described where Steven is fighting Spinell on top of the injector. The animation is just like more fluid. And I think the frame rate did go up during that point. But yeah, it just like the art style, of course, like the Steven Universe is known for the backgrounds and how well designed the backgrounds are.
The
and
aesthetic.
How,
yeah,
it's just all very like shiny and glossy in the best way, not unlike the musical,
in the good way.
not like we described on your episode of your show. But it's just great, and I love the character designs in this. There are so many good things about the animation.
I love the scale of that injector scene, because we've seen injectors before, but with this one, it's just Steven and Spinell, and it's just, final boss. So it had to be, and it's not just the animation, the Foley. I have so much respect for Foley departments, because I never, they don't tell you whether they use a sound library, a sample library, or if they go out and find these sounds, but I have so much respect for the ones who create the soundscape. I did some of that in college. I did have to do some of that in a couple classes, make soundscapes and make these tracks of just environments and stuff. If just they have to work together, and for the animation to use scale the way it did is one aspect. Without the Foley, without the massive space created by the sound, it just would not have been as effective. I'm so proud of them. I wish I could shake their hands.
I know.
I wish I could like give them high fives, but
it's great.
That injector scene,
and just like there's so much quality production behind this movie. Everyone, you could tell, cares about it so much, and obviously Rebecca Sugar is just incredible, and she knows what she's doing, so, and she's a DMV local, which I didn't know. She's from Silver Spring, Maryland.
What?
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Nope. I knew that too. Never mind.
Which I guess so Beach City is in a state called Delmarva.
It's somewhere around Delaware, I thought.
Well, Delmarva is apparently like Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, Delmarva.
Right.
And it's like the Eastern Shore, which
yeah.
I think is really cool. I was like, oh, some Virginia representation. Yeah. I thought this would be fun to just like touch on very briefly, but what are your thoughts about Steven Universe future?
I didn't mean to make that snide snicker like that, but I guess I did. Like you said earlier, Steven Universe future is definitely, I see it as a spin-off of the movie, because, like, as I was saying before, with the diamonds especially, with that being the major threat for all 5 seasons, that being the thing that we resolved in season 5. You know, over the course of the movie, the diamond's just soft now. So there's the threat, the major threat that we've been carrying all this time is resolved, finally. So to give Steven just regular, like, mundane, really, stuff to do for another season was just sort of like, didn't have to do that. I really don't think we would have been okay without Steven Universe Future. I appreciated it just because it was nice to see him walk around with a neck, but and, like, you know, like, see the gems kind of, like, do more stuff as a community. But I guess I was just like, well, yeah, but we did the thing, or we did the thing that we came here to do, basically. He already said, like, at the end of the movie, he was, like we said, he already said, I'll have my work. I'll always have my work to do. And that could have been the end of that. We knew. We knew he was going to always have his work for. We didn't have to see it. So, Steven Universe Future was, certainly, it had spin-off vibes, which is never really good. But it's okay. It's okay. It's something to watch, which I don't actually watch it.
Right. I tend to agree. Just like rapid fire takes, I think that it as a concept, it is pretty cool, and I think there are cool concepts in there, and I think Jasper is a very interesting character, so I love the Jasper story, and that was crazy. But other than that, I just didn't like where it went. I think, like, we could have assumed what would happen. I like that it addresses all of the traumatic things Steven went through and sort of shows how he coped with those traumatic incidents. But I think just overall, like, even in the intro, like, if you go on YouTube and look up Steven Universe Future opening, the animation feels lower quality. The music in Steven Universe Future feels lower quality.
Yeah, it's a little bit whack.
Storytelling is lower quality. It just I don't know what happened. And I would have loved, like, sure, make another series, but, like, it just was rushed, and it did not work well for me. But I guess I'm glad we got it. We didn't really need it. I would have been really happy if it just ended with Steven Universe, the movie, as well. So with that being said, Amaya, what are your thoughts overall, your overall rating on Steven Universe, the movie?
The movie? It's definitely a Nick pick, right? Is that what we're doing?
Nick pick. Yeah. All right. And I am also going to have to give it the Nick pick. Much like the best moments from the preceding television series, Steven Universe the movie is a powerhouse of character development, animation, and music. Contrary to expectations one would have for a straight-to-TV spin-off movie, the events of this film feel impactful, irreversible, and true to this story. Uplifted by the truly fantastic soundtrack and performances, this film is a gem to veteran fans and newcomers alike. Do you like what I did with the gem part?
I do like what you did with Jim.
Yeah. Amaya, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I had such a good time talking about everything that we talked about.
Hey man, thanks for thinking of me. This was a very decent choice. Shout out Reese for the idea, because
yes,
that couldn't have been a better option.
Reese is honestly like my creative director for this podcast. He's like, you should talk about this movie and that movie. I'm like, you're right. So thank you, Reese, for suggesting that. And of course,
thank you, Reese.
Thank you again for coming on. It was an honor to have you on the show.
It was an honor to be here.
Thanks again for listening to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Before you go, please be sure to follow at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and at Coffee Nick on Blue Sky. There you can stay up to date on everything about the show. If you like what you heard, please rate the show on your podcast app of choice and share the show with your friends. Until next time, has your planet always been this destroyed? Thanks again for listening to Coffee Nick's Movie Picks. Our opening theme is The Moondrops, and our closing theme is March of the Hares, both songs by Nathan Moore. Before you go, please be sure to follow the show on social media at Coffee Nick's Movie Picks on Instagram and TikTok, and give the show the Nick Pick by rating it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thanks again, and see you next time.